unless you ask me some very specific stories. I could tell you a bit about when William and Andrea came up as their first visiting king and queen.
Sounds like a good plan.
We, of course, had never hosted royalty before, and we had sent our herald down, I believe to March Crown is what he went to, and or he went on his own. And, he was down there, and we had just over our shoulders basically said, oh, and invite them up, invite the king and queen up, which turned out to be William the Lucky, who was going to step up. And turns out he's a traveling fool. He and Hillary Serendip traveled quite a bit in their younger days. They're not going to new groups and new areas and helping them out. And so I'm at work one day and he calls. Actually, someone calls. He didn't bother to say who he was. And back in those days, normally you could tell a long-distance phone call by the bad reception, but this one didn't sound like a bad reception. So it took me a couple minutes to figure out it was someone calling from outside of Alaska. And he kept wanting to know what our event was that summer, and I kept trying to point him at the Lord Defender training, which is what Cornette's turned into. And he finally said, no, don't you have an event there? I said, oh yeah, we have captaincy in a couple weeks. And he said, tell me about it. And we had nothing planned. This is back in the days when you didn't have to have copy in the page a month and a half ahead. So we knew the date was coming up in 2 weeks. We had the place located. We had no plans for the event itself. We knew we were having a meeting in 2 days to take care of this. About that time, I asked him, I said, who are you? He said, oh, I'm William the Lucky. Now, back in those days, everybody knew William the Lucky because he and Stephen McEnerig, who was the king that made Scalia Barony, used to have a private war every year. And it was the McEnerig Lucky War, and everybody would come and they would just choose up sides and do random scenarios, and everybody knew about William the Lucky, at least in West Kingdom. So I recognized the name, and I sputtered. Now, everybody that knows me knows it's very hard to get me speechless, yeah. But I sputtered because I had nothing to tell him. Well, we'll have this little tourney, and sure enough, they bought tickets for him and his queen, who was also a squire, which was what led into one of these stories later. And they arrived, and they came to the event, which was on the little pavilion area on the Chena River on the
Chena Wayside Road.
Chena Wayside, which we used to love to be right on the river's edge there, and it was cheap. It was a beautiful sunny day, and the trolls had come up, and we had our little tourney. The finals were Lynx and Ulrich, and they decided because they were old friends they would do something different. So the last fight of the tourney was Cloak and Dagger, which was a great deal of fun to watch because, of course, eventually they were rolling on the ground, stabbing each other. We had no idea who was killing whom. William being probably one of the stealthier kings in West Kingdom, which is the stealth kingdom to begin with. Stealth kingdom being a kingdom where you don't know who's royal and who isn't half the time, because they don't wear big fancy circlets all the time, and they don't care about that kind of stuff. And I came around the corner, and he's standing in the greenery between the pavilion and the lake at one point, and he's got this glass of water in his hand. I don't know what started the discussion, but she's standing in front of him going, I am not uppity. And he says, yes, oh, she's holding the glass of water, that's right. And he's going, dipping his fingers in it. Yes, you are uppity, to his squire queen. I am not uppity. Yes, you are. I am not uppity. Yes, you are. And at that point, he throws the water in his face and takes off running. Chases her around the greenery, pins her finally, and I yell for a camera. I'm always the instigator. I yell for a camera, and while he's holding her down and I'm not getting the camera, he shifts position to get a better picture. Which makes her sputter even more. Which is just sort of one of the reasons why we really liked William the Lucky. He was our first visitor. He was the one that we presented the petition to become a province. He's the one who came up and made us a province, and he's the one who accepted the petition.